That's my microphone making that noise. You hear me talking? Well, there's my news. Oh, there we go. It's a little delay. We'll shut that off. So today, just remind everybody, my name's Doug Fowler. I'm the host of this little experiment in public relations for anybody in and around public Pulaski County. Uh, Disclaimer number one: I am not a journalist by any means, so I'm not bound by any of their statutes or standards or what have you. This podcast is for agreeing to the terms of service and the disclaimer form posted on the Facebook page. So with that, want to welcome here and a few news ticker going on. It's on the homepage as well too as Facebook. Let me see if I got it real quick. Give me a second, everybody. And I bet it's on the ticker next page. The ticker, it'll go across the bottom of the screen, the numbers. You can call in, you can dial in. Everybody will hear you. If you text in, we'll try to get to your messages as fast as we can. And if you have any questions for Bryan, especially, this isn't about me. This is about communicating, giving you, the voters of Pulaski County, a venue where you can engage with candidates for public office, not just the sheriff's office, but any candidate that wants to come on, you can ask them questions directly, especially in the winter months and early on in the campaign. It's probably very difficult for everybody to get around this time, but everybody's almost got internet access and whatnot. So this is your platform, so to speak, to be able to ask questions of the candidates. So without further ado, give me 1 second, and there he is. There's Bryan Gibbs. Let me turn on your mic so we don't do the number. Then you're live on camera, so we won't change any rules. So how you doing, Bryan?
Good. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. So right now you work for the agency. We talk about Pulaski County Sheriff's Office.
Yep.
Give us a little background about yourself that we may or may not already know. Me having been here my whole life. Have you been here your whole life? Where you came from, how you got to be where you are.
I was originally born and raised in Rolla, and basically my whole career has been nothing but emergency services. I started out with a volunteer fire department down there, then went on to work up here at Dixon Ambulance District as an EMT,
Mm-hmm.
and then transitioned over to law enforcement, where I worked Dixon PD for a little bit, and then moved over to the detective spot.
So you got some experience behind you a little bit.
A little bit.
You see, I envy you. It's a public service all the whole way. So what I did, Bryan, is I got a set of questions here I've collected from the public and from myself and put them together for you. So,
All right.
and just reminding everybody, if you have any questions for Bryan, there's the numbers at the bottom of your screen, 573-408-0339. You can call in at the end of the show. We'll open it up to questions, or you can text us right now if you have questions. And let's make sure my regular phone's turned off. But that phone line is dedicated just to the streaming program. Make sure I don't have any. It's a Galaxy. I usually always use an iPhone, and having to learn this. I'm hoping for a new producer to come on. She lives with me. So again, I'm not affiliated with any for sure the man or any shape, form, or whatever it has to do with Fort Leonard. This is just me in my little basement hovel here in this dungeon. And just so if anybody out there does recognize me, this has nothing to do with Fort Leonard or imply approval from Fort Leonard or the government or any other agency. This is just my little thing. But one of my jobs, throughout the years working for the government in different capacities has been budget. And I think that's everybody's concern. We got a brand new jail. How often do people actually go out there and look at the budget, see how much we're spending? Last year, too, there's a lot of budget-related experience because I'm pretty sure that's probably the biggest budget in the county is the sheriff's office.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
how do you plan to allocate the resources or the dollars effectively to the most pressing needs of the county?
Okay. Before I answer that question, I want to make one statement, though, because this is going to be for any candidate that should get the office.
Oh, it should. Yeah,
So whenever
absolutely.
budget every year is due by usually the first week of January.
All right.
And it usually gets approved towards the last week of January. So no matter which candidate comes in, we're working on a previous sheriff's budget.
Oh, wow. I never thought of that.
So, yeah. And to answer your question, the budget needs to be kind of more fluid. And just like law enforcement and the type of calls that we would handle. In order to allocate resources to those proper areas, you've got to look and see what areas need it the most, where you can pull those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, like you said, it's not infinite, it's constrained down, and work those grants. And if you need to, pull lines from other lines of the budget that you're able to
Right.
in order to meet those constraints.
Yeah, I working on budget, and I'll refer back to this because it's one of my favorite topics. And I can understand that the budget is a plan,
Mm-hmm.
and so what they say: a plan of attack only doesn't even survive for first contact.
Yeah.
Someone's going to throw it out of the water, and it's going to blow it up. And I can relate to that. So, and probably a lot of work, and I had forgotten that it's 1st of January.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even realized that you're working with somebody else's work,
Correct.
and you may or may not be aware of exactly what's in there, other than what you get a chance to see after the election or when it's actually approved.
Yep.
All right. All right. Next question. Approach to fiscal responsibility. How would you approach fiscal responsibility within the sheriff's department, ensuring that taxpayer dollars are utilized efficiently without compromising public safety? Now, I do want to caveat that uh, I'm always believing that you could throw $1 billion at the public safety
Mm-hmm.
and never fix everything. You just can't.
Oh no.
It's always going to be there, but within reason, what would you be your approach to that?
First off, you gotta, like I said, you're working with someone else's budget for this
Mhm.
first year, so you need to kind of work with them and see what the needs were and why those needs are there, and appropriate those funds appropriately to that.
Right?
So, and as for the public side of it, we're elected officials. The
Sure.
public elects us. They should have every right to see where their money's going and how it's doing. So if they wanted to come down, and of course we just can't give it to you. There's this little
Sure.
paperwork you got to fill, the sunshine request or whatever.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, I'd be all for that.
Yeah.
Releasing those records so they can see where their money's going and see that it's not getting wasted on things that doesn't need to be wasted on.
That's good. One thing we get our sole source for news out of that building is Daryl Todd most of the times,
Yeah.
especially the executive meetings or how the county executives. Is that the three of them or the executives? Commissioners.
The elected commissioners.
Commissioners, yeah. So they work the budget all the time, and I was reading it today. I like to see it live sometimes, but to demonstrate how this process of budget development goes through, and understanding there's some behind the scenes. So maybe you'll think of that if you do come out on top of the election.
Yeah, and like you said,
if there's dollars
from Mr. Todd, but again, he's only one man. He
That's
can't
right.
make every meeting, so
exactly, and I'm a technology geek. That's the reason I put this together, this little show thing together, is to make it transparent for you, an opportunity to speak directly to the voters. So, all right, here's another one. And was you military?
no, I was not.
Okay, so I was, and so training has always been crucial. So this is crucial to you and every other law enforcement official, and even the admin staff, the support staff, like that. And going back to the limited budget and resources, how do you intend to enhance or prioritize the ongoing training programs for officers to keep them well equipped for the challenges they may face?
Luckily, there are programs out there, and I've researched them, and I've actually got our guys approved to go to some of them. That's completely free training, so it doesn't cost us anything. But I found one program that I sent myself and some other guys to, and completely free, lodging paid for. All the department had to do was fit the gas for us to drive up there and back.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we fit the bill for our own food. But there's plenty of those out there. There's plenty of we can co-host classes and bring the training to our department, and with that training get free seats for that. So that's always an opportunity for us to look at as well, instead of paying numerous amounts of dollars to send everybody to training, because it's not that big of a line as you might think.
Oh, I can believe it. And it just goes back to the limited budget and the effectiveness of the training, the needs, and then you still got to do your best with public safety while those people are gone.
Yep.
Oh, here we go. Look at that. First question, Darren Brashear. How do you? We're going. If you're all right with that, we can.
Yeah, that's fine.
At the end. Okay. How do you plan to recruit without taking from city police departments?
Well, one thing the department that I've noticed haven't really done is go out to these academy courses.
Right.
go out to the academies, talk about your department, kind of what separates you from other departments, what benefits you have, and what could they get from possibly coming to your department.
Sure.
So we need to start going to things like more job fairs, because I know Fort Leonard would host
Hmm.
those as well, and we need to
Sure.
get out to those more and actually go into these places that have academy courses that
Hmm.
not everybody has a employer lined up,
Sure.
and recruit from there as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I brought this up with Mr. Pappas when he was here. The needs of the law enforcement official or the person
Hmm.
in training versus the needs of the community.
Yeah.
And so that's a tough balancing act. Thank you, Mr. Brashear, for the question. I appreciate you logging in. And if you have more, just fling them out. This is open discussion. Uh, Here, going back to my questions, in light of advancements in law enforcement technology, how would you strategically invest new tools and equipment to enhance the effectiveness of the sheriff's department within budgetary constraints? That's a long one.
Yeah.
That's a long-winded one, and I remember putting that one together. I said, well, it's a broad question, but I think multiple applications. But answer it
Yeah.
the best you can.
I mean, again, there's always grants.
Sure.
I mean, there's new technology always coming out, and if somebody has a new technology they want to test,
Mm-hmm.
open up the department to be willing to test it.
Sure.
Because that gives you access to that technology. You can see what it does and possibly work out a deal with them. Also, there's numerous other agencies that we could join
Right.
that would also give us access to more technology for the department that would also help better serve the community as a whole.
Gotcha. I want to flip back to this question from Darren
Hmm.
or Mr. Brashear. I'm sorry. Let me make sure I didn't lose it all. The challenges I always thought the sheriff's department has in competing against the cities. Sometimes the cities just pay better,
Yeah.
and you can't fault. If I'm a detective or a new officer and I get all my certifications, it's kind of like anywhere else. And I'm just saying, big monopoly through the gate.
Hmm.
You know, you get at the lower level and you get all your certifications. Next thing you know, you pop smoke. You're off the fling where you're competitive now for those
Yeah.
higher paying jobs, and it's probably just a challenge you're just going to have to live with.
And the reason why is when it comes down to the budget, you're looking at sales tax
Right, right, right.
and city sales tax. There's
Yeah.
going to be more of that than there is for the county. And I believe right now, from what I've researched and heard from commissioners, is that sales tax are down this year.
Yeah, I read that too.
So every budget in the courthouse is looking to take a hit.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's also something you got to be fluid with and work with in order to maintain and make sure you can still find ways to make that match for what you need and what your requirements are going to be to continue operations.
Now, is it as easy as and stupid in my mind? But if we wanted to pay our deputies and law enforcement personnel down at the sheriff's department who are not getting paid from a city tax, obviously, but just by
Hmm.
the county tax, if we wanted to be able to pay them more, is it literally just have to increase the taxes? I mean, that's where the money comes from.
Not always.
Okay.
There are some. I know we have approval for one grant that we've had approval for years,
Okay.
thanks to the individual that writes our grants that
Sure.
actually does a
The county, you wouldn't get the grant.
correct.
Okay, I think I remember
Yeah.
reading about that. Okay, cool.
And then when it comes down to it, we've already discussed the new jail and everything a
Sure,
little
sure.
bit. It's a new building made for housing federal inmates, but
Yeah.
currently, due to the bond constraints on it from building, until that's paid off, we can't house federal inmates.
Really?
So once those bonds can be taken care of, then you can start making sure you meet the standard for the federal inmates. And then that's not a tax increase. That's money that the federal government will pay to house people there. And that money will always be constant. That's what Phelps does. And I think they
Really?
make probably about pretty close to $250,000
Good googly moogly.
doing that for federal.
I call it OPM money, other people's money.
Yeah,
Why take the taxpayer money when you can get it from somebody else?
exactly.
So
Get it from the people that are taxing us instead of vice versa.
That's right. At least we know it's going home somewhere.
Yeah.
So going back to the questions that I have, staffing levels. This is probably a problem and challenge, not a problem. I should say, challenge or opportunity down at the sheriff's office for everybody or anybody down there. But do that the best way possible. Understanding budget's not infinite.
Mhm.
You don't have an infinite number of resources, whether personnel or how you plan. What would be your approach to that?
Well, like you said, the budget definitely isn't infinite, and everywhere is facing lack of officers or lack of individuals wanting to do this line of work.
Sure.
So we're not the only ones suffering. It's just not on the road. It's through dispatchers and everywhere. So the thing you need to do to handle that, I mean, if you're the sheriff, you're elected official, you're out there to serve the people. If you got to cover down for some of your guys, then you get out there and cover down for them.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not above going out there and working the road in order to make sure that we have full coverage. And I know most of the people currently down there at the sheriff's department aren't against that either. So
Sure.
when it comes time, buck up and get out there and do it and assist them with doing it.
Like there's a job to do, it's got to be done.
Exactly.
And sometimes it takes all bodies up front.
Yeah, because in the end, it's not about me. It's not
Sure.
about the deputies. It's about the oath and everything we took to serve the people of our community.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be done.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Officer retention. Now, just watched the news at lunch today while I was dozing off, getting ready for the meeting or our interview, and the impact the military is having with
Yep.
keeping people in. And I'm sure, and I don't know for certain, maybe you could educate me, but it's probably the same kind of challenges that you'll have to work with down at the sheriff's office, trying to retain good quality law
Mhm.
enforcement people like we have. How is your approach to keep that steady or to fight the battle to keep those bodies in the seats?
Well, I mean, that's when you kind of want to change the culture of the sheriff's office. I mean, you want to get the people in the right spots
Right?
to where, one, they can do the job at that spot, and two, they're perfectly capable of managing and taking care of the employees
Sure.
and communicating any issues with you and making sure that those employees' issues are addressed and taken care of.
Right.
So, I mean, working closely as a team with a leadership concept would be that would make the sheriff's office look more as a attractive employee than some of these other agencies.
Square peg in a round hole.
Yep.
Sometimes try and meet people with their talents and skills. Skills, SKOs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Place them as best they can where they want to be.
Yep, and make sure you get the right people for those right spots. I mean, we don't want the sheriff's department to be a stepping stone for another employer. We
Sure.
want it. We want to make it to where it is that employer. We want it to grow and be better in the future, and,
Gotcha.
and keep it growing and keep it going.
Make it a lifetime choice.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Make it a retirement, not a stepping stone.
There you go. Given the landscape of criminal activities in Pulaski County, uh, emerging threats, and how would you allocate the resources, limited as they are, to try to take care of address those challenges that are on the? I'm personally, I'm thinking fentanyl,
Mm-hmm.
the drugs, just in general. One of my viewers last week, when I interviewed Mr. Pappas for the first or second time, when my sound wasn't terrible, I was talking about we're not aware of any prosecutions for death cases associated with fentanyl. So if I gave you fentanyl, I should be prosecuted. And I don't know if you're aware, and even this comes out of nowhere, but I think that maybe what I was thinking of when I talked about this question, these emerging threats. It's getting more and more.
Mm-hmm. Well, law enforcement's very fluid.
Right.
So like if you're discussing that we're having a drug increase in one side at 1 month, and then it could change to the next to being brash of breaking and enterings,
Mhm.
thefts, things like that. So you got to be very fluid
Gotcha.
when you handle those situations. One thing I would like to do and get done is monthly intel meetings,
Gotcha.
because granted, with other departments in the whole county, because granted, St. Robert might be seeing one major issue on their
Sure.
side, and two, we might have something happening in ours that's become up. Like if they've got a rash of catalytic converter thefts,
Sure.
uh, we've got fentanyl, and maybe Richland or Crocker's having a bunch of vehicle break-ins, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and work closer with those departments to kind of figure out a pattern, make sure that we can get down some time frame, stuff like that,
Sure.
increase patrols in those areas. And if we need to, I mean, we always got the assistance of other agencies as well that we could call in to help us
I look like
curb that.
I look map, hotspots.
Mm-hmm.
You see that. Of course, that's a lot of technology, but
Yeah.
thinking you could take whatever resources you got, just throw them at the a raging fire versus the little campfires that are going out. You can't overwhelm it.
Yeah, and that's why you could have your monthly intel meetings to discuss what they're seeing arise in and what steps we can take working together to curb that. And of
Sure.
course, during those meetings, you prioritize what needs to be prioritized.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't care if you're city, county, or what. The end is the people and the citizens we're here to.
Yeah, and you may have said this, answer this already, but he's asking how many years of combined law enforcement experience do you have, and what would you consider your leadership style?
I'll answer the easy one first because I got to do math in my head right now. Thanks, Mr. Bashir. I know him. Um, my leadership is it's not going to be iron fist. I want input. I'm one person. My eyes can't be everywhere. I'm definitely not perfect.
Sure.
None of us are. What I'm seeing, if I'm sheriff and I'm up here, and what my guys are seeing down here, I want them to be able to come to me and communicate to me the problems and everything. So, and to the first part of the question, the how many years of law enforcement experience, it was
I don't have a calculator. I got one on my phone.
6 months in Dixon,
Uh huh.
6 years at St. Robert. So we're at 6.6 months.
Yeah, yeah.
2 years as the investigator for the prosecutor's office, and I'm currently on my 5th year at county.
14 years
So,
plus. Okay.
and 20 plus just in emergency services alone.
Wow. That's the worst end of it, I think. That's the after.
Yeah, I started when I was 18
Oh, wow.
and hit 43 yesterday. So
The questions, and if you have any more, Mr. Bashir, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer for everybody's edification. Here's one. You kind of brought this up and spoke to it. Can you discuss your experience in negotiating and securing grants to supplement the budget, especially in areas of community policing, training, or technology upgrades?
So I've worked closely, like I said, with our grant writer.
Right.
If we find a grant we want,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go communicate it to her. I'll work with her because she's got vast experience in this.
Sure.
She don't need my complete input on it, but just finding those keywords. If I might think of a keyword that works better than what we're using
Sure.
currently to do that. I've brought training down to us that was more regional than just to us. Brought down active shooter training for instructors, and we had
Mhm.
individuals come down to little old Waynesville
Right.
from Kansas City all the way to St. Louis
Oh, wow.
for this active shooter training. I'm currently working on trying to bring in more from Midwest Counter Drug Training Center for like coalitions and things like that,
Sure.
as well as canine. And there's a couple like for rural officers in those environments that I want to try and bring down here as well. And those are the kinds of courses that we can host
Mm-hmm.
and get the free seats for. So it costs us no money,
Oh, wow.
and that we can save some of that training towards the end of the year. So if something comes up, we can have more money to work with that.
I got you.
So if there's a more advanced grant writing course or something, and that course comes up and we've been able to save money by bringing in this free training, we can send somebody to that, or grant writer to that, and benefit the apartment
Sure.
much more than it would currently.
Gotcha. I can follow that. Other people's money.
Yeah.
Spend
Yeah.
it. Not our taxpayers. Well, it is, but at least we're spending it at home. Training in such areas as de-escalation and community relations is crucial. I think I was pontificating a little bit here. How would you prioritize and incorporate these training aspects to ensure officers are well prepared to handle diverse situations?
And that is one that's big in law enforcement, and it's not here
Mhm.
everywhere. And that's why I say you got to have the right people in the right spots.
Right?
I mean, we do work closely with individuals that do provide us with, because we need to get away from that computer based stuff.
Oh, sure, sure.
I mean, training on de-escalation and things like that. Yes, it's mandatory by the state, but you can go online and take a course from the 80s and say you have your certification renewed.
I
But
can relate.
we work more closely with the mental health aspect side of it, with mental health providers that are post CLE certified to provide us that training,
Right?
and work with them for the de-escalation so they can more advanced training on working de-escalation and handling individuals with mental health issues,
Sure, sure.
because not everything we deal with is criminal.
I didn't realize that Compass Health, that's for mental health issues, isn't it? Is that what
They have a vast variety of services.
I had somebody contact me for photography, and I had no idea what it was called, but somebody told me it's a mental health support facility also.
Yeah, they offer a vast array
Right, right.
of different things that they can handle. I believe they do have some substance abuse and other
Okay.
things that they provide counseling for and uh, else, but we'd have to talk to them
No, sure.
directly and get
Yeah.
somebody from here
I was
to
just
go more in depth as to what.
forces hopefully in the county
Yeah,
that are available to
I
all the
mean,
law enforcement.
we work with Compass Health to provide
Sure.
services and things like that, and they are the ones that do our crisis intervention training, which basically gives free training to law enforcement.
Sure.
It's like I think that it's a week long,
Mm-hmm.
and when we send officers to it, deputies to it, they basically get every CEU they need
Mm-hmm.
for their license for taking that course. That's how in depth it is,
Wow.
and how much training they put into it.
Wow. And they're the professionals.
Yes,
That's good firsthand other than a computer screen.
yeah. Anything other than the computer
Yeah,
screen.
I can relate. Uh, last question is: how do you plan to involve officers in the budget process, seeking their input on resource development and
I
allocation?
want to have the. I'm going to be seeing things from a different light. Should I be
Sure,
the sheriff,
sure,
and they're going
sure.
to be the ones on the ground running.
Right, right,
So I want everybody's voice to be heard, and one thing that can be done in order to do that is actually do a committee
right.
from individuals that are on the ground doing the work or in the jail doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
as well as a couple supervisors, but give everybody a chance for their voice to be heard.
Gotcha.
And then, I mean, we wouldn't be able to make everybody happy because if so, we'd be so.
True, and then maybe another nugget of that is educating them on the budget. Said money
Yeah,
just don't fall out of the trees, and it's amazing from the places I've worked is that some people do not realize how complicated the budget can be, and dollar bills just don't fall out of the sky.
yeah.
So yeah, you got a long road ahead of you on that one if you do come out on top. So Mrs. Ross, thank you so much, Rossi Ross. I'm assuming it's is it Mrs. or Miss or Mister. I'm gonna try to go over your picture. It doesn't matter. Why hasn't the jail administrator done any training for the correctional officers? And you can choose to answer this or not. I understand if you can't. This is the jail administrator you talked this current sheriff into hiring, even though she had no experience.
So, as a former employee that left, Miss Ross knows that there's certain questions I can and cannot answer.
Gotcha.
What I can answer and into this question is that we do currently have a 48-hour jail academy course coming
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be taught in our building. That again is not only open to our agency but other surrounding agencies that come in. And as the step into hiring them, they were he's the one that gets the final call.
Sure, sure.
So,
Understand. Thank you for answering it. Like I
mhm,
said, you didn't have to
yeah,
answer. And just Mrs. Sorry about that, Mrs. Rossi, but thank you for your questions. So we've got 9 viewers out there. That's awesome. Now I got some questions from Mr. Eric Dean. I think, like I said, you knew him.
yeah.
He emailed me this question. Said, Mr. Dean, I know you're not watching today. You said you couldn't do it, but for those that don't know him, former sheriff's deputy or law enforcement officer, worked for Ron Long. Anyway, he going to the question. He's big on education and training. What advanced training and education that puts some above the other candidates? What your training and experience and education that you feel puts you above the other candidates as far as if you're lining them up and your resume side by side, how do you feel or what do you feel assuming the other candidates are as transparent as you are,
Hmm.
how you feel you line up and what are your strengths, so to speak?
Well, when I got into law enforcement, I knew I wanted to do investigations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I didn't just focus on one aspect. I didn't just go towards either straight narcotics or straight sex crimes.
Sure,
I kind of went for, and again, when I did this, I kind of had an idea of, budgets. So I got to find
sure.
courses I can take that aren't going to cost much. So with the prosecutor's office, I was a member of child sex crimes, but also digital forensics, reviewing digital forensics, getting into devices, and civilian law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
that have actually taken the 1 and 2 track course for human trafficking
Okay.
because even in our small town, we're not immune to it.
Oh, we got
So,
I-44.
yep, yep. So I've broadened my training to not just include one thing.
Sure.
I've tried to go to numerous different trainings to expand my horizons.
Okay. Thank you. Um, I think you already answered the law enforcement experience, but as a detective, you say how many years?
I've been 5 right now running
Okay.
the sheriff's department,
Okay.
the detective unit.
Big business. Mr. Dean says the sheriff's office is a big business and should be run like a business. I got to agree with him on that.
Absolutely.
What are your plans for budgeting money and budgets and managing big budgets?
So I'll be upfront. I don't have a lot of experience with managing a budget as large as the sheriff's
Okay.
department. But again, that comes into having your committee,
Sure.
talking to them about the needs that we have and the needs the community have,
Mm-hmm.
and working to, if we don't have it in the budget, to secure those funds, whether it be through grants or other options to get that job done. And yeah, as sheriff, you're gonna have the final say so of yes, we'll do this and use that budget money, or no, we can't do that, but let's go back and look. And that's why I say you're not gonna be able to make everybody happy, but you also got to operate within those lines of your budget.
Yeah, I was hoping one day to get Dave Ernst up here. He's the county clerk, and talk about if. And I talked to we had a treasurer with Mac Williamson.
Hmm.
He come. He was my first interview, and excuse me, and other jobs that I've had that we won't speak of. We get money. It's funny how they got mad at me, but anyway, you get money, but it's fence is what we call it. You can't use it for anything else but other what it was intended to. It's
Hmm.
called the Anti Deficiency Act. So if you get the money, you got X $5. What's that? ADA. But anyway, it's for this $5 you get one ice cream cone. The restrictions are placed on the sheriff's department budget. You may or may not be able to answer that, but I wanted to ask Dave Ernst that if there's, you have to deal with. Yeah, I got $6 million in my checkbook,
Hmm.
but I can only spend it on the jail. Or I got $10 million in my checkbook, and I can only spend it on salary. It's fenced money. You can't
Yeah.
use it for other stuff.
So there's various lines within the budget. So, and the jail has its own lines for,
Right.
like, let's say, inmate security,
Check.
utilities, and things like that. So those are the ones you closely got to monitor to make sure, one, the money's, you got to keep an eye on the money,
Sure.
definitely. And you got to make sure you're pulling it from the right lines,
Yeah.
because there's some lines that you can't pull certain things out of, and there's other lines that you can, but you can only pull certain amounts.
You don't want the lights to go out the jail.
Yeah. No,
You want to
that'd
pay
be a
that
very bad day.
Oh, I can't imagine. I can't. You just hear the sirens off like Shawshank Redemption. We talked about grant writing, and aside from law enforcement, this is Mr. Dean again.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any plans to train deputies or prepare for the disaster of any kind, whether or otherwise? Or another way to look at it, he says, is turn everything over to, or is it, or just look the other way and turn it over to OEM? I don't know who, Office of Emergency Management. We do have that, don't
Yeah, we do.
we? Okay. He's saying because the sheriff needs to have a plan in place for that eventuality.
Hmm.
You can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, is he talking about
So it's, what are
any
your
disaster or?
I say bad weather or otherwise, just
Okay.
bad enough disaster. Well, and I'm assuming if you got to get OEM involved, it's going to take some training.
Office to do is because it needs to be utilized as more than just, let's say, search warrants.
Sure.
I mean, if we have a missing persons, the deputies go out and look for them too, and that's something the SRT team could also do.
Right.
But I want training to be cross-trained with the fire department, and that's something you'd go to with the local departments and
Right.
tabletop discussions. If there's training that you can have, then you have it, and if you can't, then you tabletop it. And he's right. The agencies have usually said, "Well, that's not me, that's someone else,"
Sure.
and not just in law enforcement.
Oh yeah.
But it takes more. We're all a team. We're all serving the community. We need to work closer as a team, and somebody needs to start to working on that and getting it done.
Now, was you here with the floods?
Yes.
Maybe,
Yeah, I was at St. Robert at that time,
Okay.
working there.
What was the response when you were working there? Even though it's unrelated to the sheriff's department, what was your response in part of that? Maybe talk to your experience about that.
Mine was oh crap because I was currently living in Rolla at that point in time, and I was trying to find a way to get to work
Gotcha.
and wasn't able to. But I do know that the sheriff's department called in everybody they could
Right.
that was in the area that could make it there. St. Robert did the same, and Waynesville did the same,
Right.
and they even got assistance from Fort Leonard Wood.
Oh, really? That's good.
And so, I mean, it happened. It may not happen all the time,
Yeah.
but that's why we need the preparedness and need to train with one another and at least tabletop
Yeah.
discussion that should we have one of these events, what's our plan,
Yeah.
what is where, and how do we get those resources from point A to point B?
Now, do you know if the FEMA it has an office nearby, is or Jeff City, or is it just a different? Like we have our county OEM,
Hmm.
we have the state level OEM type office slash FEMA. I didn't know if the federal FEMA was located here. Just curious.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
The OEM guy, he'd have all the contacts and everything for that. So, I mean, I just talked about not pushing it off, but I don't have that answer. But I do know that him, so I can talk to him and find out.
Yeah, I mean, I was
So,
just curious because there's different levels, and I've went through a couple of the FEMA classes online,
hmm.
but I did learn. And there's site responsibility. Whoever there's person in charge of the site. Can't everybody in charge, and responding at different levels for different events and different things. And I'm assuming somewhere in Missouri there's a FEMA office or a regional office.
and I'm sure there is too. And it's going to kind of probably boil down to is are FEMA one of those agencies like you got with the FBI and
Right.
the DEA? Do they have an Eastern District and a Western District?
Gotcha.
So, depending on where you're at in the
Oh
state,
yeah.
which office you're going to fall under.
I remember seeing that map. Matter of fact, in one of my trainings. That was some years ago. Okay. One of the challenges. I'm going to reword your question, Mr. Dean. But thank you so much for your question. But I'm going to reword it. Um, One of the challenges with the Pulaski office of sheriff is that it isn't a public position or an elected position. So therefore, politics are going to play. Is right versus the naysayers and the powers that push you and stuff like that. How do you deal with what's your plan to deal with something like that?
That is actually a good one. I mean, should I be sheriff? I want to be a constitutional sheriff.
Sure.
So I want to be as strictly following the U.S. and Missouri Constitution as possible. So if we're talking about, you know, ATF with some of
Sure.
their stuff of wanting to come down and get records from us, absolutely not.
Right.
They don't need those records. Why do they need those
Right.
records?
Right.
Now, should they come down with like a search warrant or something like that, look it over, see the facts, and we have a county attorney.
Right.
So work with him
Mm-hmm.
as to see whether or not that,
Uh,
is this all said and good? Can we do this?
right.
Or do we need to reject this under the grounds and fight it under, whatever
Mm-hmm.
we need to for the citizens of the county?
Because I know it's a very hot button topic, especially Second Amendment rights and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and invasion of privacy. And I'm not educated enough on the discussion or the problems or challenges, so I won't even try to entertain an opinion. But I can understand why it's a very sensitive. I've got my share. I don't want anybody touching
Hmm.
them. And don't tell
Yep.
me where I got to store them. Mr. Dean, thank you so much for your comments. Uh, Dennis Hutchinson, the man. I just happen to know this guy. He's pretty awesome, at least in my mind. But thank you, Dennis. He says FEMA in St. Louis and KC. That's what I kind of expected.
Yeah. And like I said, that'd be a regional thing. So depending on where we are,
Yeah.
which I believe would be Western District.
I think it is. I really do. But let's go up. Heather Camprath. I hope I get your name right. How will you handle insubordinate employees and employees that utilize department resources for personal use? Yeah, I can see that as a standard question for any new manager or executive.
I mean, there's policies in place,
Right.
and if they refuse to follow those policies that are already put in place,
Sure.
then I mean, you go with your steps.
Yep.
I mean, in the policy, is it something that they did that affected immediate health to them, their safety to themselves or a citizen or something else like that? I believe the policy of the sheriff's department is immediate determination in something like that
Right.
course, and that's what needs to be done. If it's something that's like negligence in training
Right.
or things like that, then work with them, redirect them, happens again, do the write-ups.
Right.
But again, this is stuff you closely got to manage, and you got to take the appropriate steps for the appropriate action.
Where I used to work, I'm going to say that with a disclaimer all the time. On the Douglas factors, depending on what the, what the impact was,
Mm-hmm.
what the severity is. So thank you so much. That's a tough question to answer. Darren Brashear, in your own words, why do you want to be sheriff? Well, that's a great question. Thank you. In your own words, why do you want to be sheriff, and why do you think is the best time for you to become the sheriff now?
I wanted to be sheriff because I want to make changes, and the only way you're going to be able to make those changes is to be in the seat. I
Right.
mean, we have a large county,
Mm-hmm.
and like Mr. Dean said, training has always been an issue,
Right.
and so on and so forth. And we have a new jail.
Right.
With this new jail, it gives an opportunity to bring in more training, pull it in for us, not just for our deputies, but for also surrounding agencies as well,
Right.
because it doesn't just serve as, sheriff's department only. It would be a big service to the whole Pulaski County,
Sure.
whether it be a city or anything like that. And in order to get that done, you've got to be the person in the seat.
Right. Right.
So
I've been in that position where I think I can do the job better, and then somebody asks you, well, why don't you?
yeah,
Well, I got you. That's a good answer. Thank you so much, Dennis. Yeah, I already acknowledged you. Thank you so much.
with a grudge.
Understood. Inappropriate relationships. So, gotcha. So, anybody else have any questions? I'm going to check my phone across the bottom of if I can open my phone, or you can text me at 573-408-0339 and just wait for me to answer them. But everybody's going to hear it. If you're interested, I'm going to leave the line open for about 5 minutes. Appreciate everybody's watching. We got 13 viewers. That's excellent. Usually we get about 2,700 views after it's all done. But I appreciate everybody joining us today. Now I do have some follow-up questions. I did take a couple notes.
Okay.
And like I said, full understanding if you can't answer it. I don't understand, and if I don't understand, it means a lot of people probably don't understand either, how the reserve deputies / officers, how that system works. I understand we got reserve deputies on staff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, but not all of them do their service here. They go to
Correct.
they go to other counties or whatever to do their service here. But then we have reserve deputies here that do their service here. Is it a choice or maybe just right?
They fall under the sheriff's department now, so they're given a reserve commission, and generally the reserves are required to come in do 16 hours a month.
Okay.
For the county, but
outside
SROs,
the regular reserve 16 hours.
Yeah, but
SROs
are fully time employed by the
Okay.
school, providing a service to the county, so
Gotcha.
that they don't really reflect on that. The investigator for the prosecutor's office, same way, a reserve commission, but they're a law enforcement officer out there doing a job.
Right.
So then they have to go do their job. So
Right.
it's not mandated that, you have to come in and do your 16 hours.
Gotcha.
There is a sign-in book in the bullpen area, so that when reserves do come in, they log in that time. And so long as they're doing their hours and everything,
Sure.
and keeping up on their CEUs,
Continue,
that's how the reserve
continuing education units, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's how the reserve program is currently working.
Now, who decides, if that's even decided, where they do their reserve time? Now, if they're a reserve deputy in Pulaski County, is it up to the individual to go where they want, where they want to go, or does the sheriff decide, I need you to support the detectives or traffic or what have you?
The sheriff will look at basically their training and experience,
Okay.
and their knowledge.
Okay.
If you got somebody that fresh out of the academy that wants
Sure.
to reserve, then of course they'll do their reserve hours once a month for the 16 hours a month, come in and do ride time until they're ready to be
Gotcha.
put out on their own, and then they can either come in and ride with another deputy or go out with knowledge that has been in the field forever and done investigations forever. Then he'd look at that and take that into consideration to assigning them to the detective unit.
Okay.
And if they come in and constantly do their hours and stuff like that, and they want to, say, branch from being a road officer to investigations, that's something he's got to look at as a whole and see if they're going to be a good fit, and then move them to there if he sees that they're going to be a good fit.
Or whatever. But
usually the sheriff's office doesn't support dual county commissions.
Okay.
I believe is what the policy is.
Okay.
So if they're working here,
Mm-hmm.
he's not going to allow them to carry an employee is working here,
Mm-hmm.
wants to reserve somewhere else, does the reserve time somewhere else, and then goes gets hurt. Because then that falls back on, now we're down somebody and we've got to adapt to that situation.
Gotcha.
So that's why they don't usually allow dual commissions for the full-time
But
employees.
if they have a commission from another county, but are got his commission from Branson, but wants to do his work full time here in whatever capacity.
Like if he's a reserve in Branson,
Yeah, but does full time here. Is it all right for his
that
commission in Branson?
that'd be the same
Oh,
thing.
okay.
Is it would come down to each scenario would have to come down onto the current sheriff and what their
Okay.
decision would be, because you got to look at that aspect of they're vital to your everyday
Sure.
operations. If they're full time here, you don't want them going and doing secondary employment out here and getting hurt.
Sure.
So if they do want to do secondary employment, there's a form that they do have to fill out to the sheriff and
Right.
submit to the sheriff for his approval, and before they can take on dual employment
Gotcha.
responsibilities.
That's a mess. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. Let's see here, Mr. Bashir. Would you be willing to debate with the other candidates?
Absolutely, I'd be willing to go up there and answer any public questions or anything, and have us all there.
Well, a little disclaimer. Mr. Bashir, I kind of planted the seed already. A couple opportunities. I've only interviewed Mr. Pappas and Mr. Gibbs here so far, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a roundtable discussion on the challenges of being law enforcement in Pulaski County, not necessarily a debate. Then, if the other candidates want to come in and talk a little bit, or we have a debate virtually, I'm happy to host it. But the challenge with that is I'm not a moderator, which means I'm not an expert, but I'm happy to populate some questions and get questions from the county voters and serve as kind of a gatekeeper. So if you're interested in doing something like that, get on my page and let's get on. Let's engage. That's kind of exciting to me.
Yeah,
At least have a discussion. I mean, the five of
yeah,
us or whoever. I mean, we got 4 running so far.
yeah. And like I said, the public needs to do research.
Dennis Hutchinson, don't monopolize my time, Mr. Hutchinson. No, thank you so much for your comments and listening. I appreciate it. I had occasion to hear officers from many Pulaski County departments testify. By far, how could you address court preparation and appearances?
Okay, that's a good question too. I
Oh,
mean, there's courses for testifying in court.
mm-hmm,
And not only that, you can go to the prosecutor as well. So if you got a big case coming up, you can go up to them and
mm-hmm.
have them kind of prep you as to what you'll be in for, things like that. So work with the employees to make sure that if they need that, they get that and have the time to do that. And again, if that's something where I have to cover the road to do it, then we'll do that.
Right.
But getting those that haven't testified before, getting them to those courses, because your academy is just like a little small block course.
Oh, sure.
It's never
Sure.
going to cover everything.
It's like
But
PLDC in the Army or something.
yeah, so there's more in depth training on that. There's getting with your prosecutors if you're uncomfortable with testifying and
Mm-hmm.
you're unsure what's going to happen, and working with them is a kind of like a mock trial or
Sure.
something, so they can be cross examined and things like that. But
It's not like you see on TV, I'm sure.
no, it's not. It's completely different.
Yeah, because I sat on a jury last year, I think it was, and it was surprising how much different than it is. And I'm a huge fan of The Wire. We talked about that, one of the
Hmm.
best police shows in the world. But the amount of prep sometimes these big cases the prosecutor will dedicate to preparing the witnesses, including
Absolutely.
LEOs. So thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you so much, Dennis. I appreciate it. Kenny Nelson, who will be in your command staff and what experience will they bring to Pulaski County? I never thought of that question. Great
Yeah.
question.
The command staff that's something you're gonna have to wait till you're in office and see who's there and who actually fits those roles.
Sure.
I mean, you don't want to jump in office and automatically start plugging people into places, and that's probably something that would be a year or so out,
Okay.
because there's so many other things you've got to get in there, look at, and deal with. I mean, you got to look at policies, procedures. You got to look at budget.
Command staff of the sheriff's department.
Right now, it is we'll start with the road first. You got the sheriff,
Mm-hmm. He's at the top
road
of the org.
lieutenant.
I'm thinking org chart.
Yeah, you got the sheriff, the road lieutenant, You've got the sergeant, you got corporals,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got your deputies. And in the investigations unit, we got the deputy or the detectives that,
Right.
report to me, and then I report to sheriff.
Sure.
For the jail, you've got the sheriff,
Right.
the
And
O's.
staff, or is there a select few that sit on a committee like?
That's the whole command staff as of right now.
Yeah.
There's last time I looked at the budget, we don't have the chief deputy spot or anything
Oh,
else.
really?
So yeah, so all of it, every member of the command staff follows their chain of command and reports
Right.
to sheriff. Detectives follow theirs and
Right.
report to sheriff as
And the
well as the
lieutenant
jail.
and the chief deputy is not part of that command staff.
There isn't one right now.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah. I believe that line was taken out.
Oh, really? So we don't
So
have a chief deputy.
no, not right now. The lieutenant was basically going to have the chief deputy
Got
spot because they're going to be second over everything should the sheriff
Gotcha.
not be there.
Gotcha.
So
Got to have somebody second.
yeah,
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Thank you so much, Mr. Nelson. Appreciate your question. Mr. Bales, over the years, several people have left the sheriff office, have been made the claim that the sheriff's office is a toxic environment. How will you fix the constant revolving door? Let me see. I skipped a little bit. Revolving door of people leaving, like has been the case since 2007. I'm going to assume that's 2007.
yeah, I think you missed a zero.
That's fine, but I'm going to assume 2007 or 17, but I'm going to assume 7.
Yeah. Um, Holding people accountable mostly. I mean, accountability is a big issue in law enforcement, and if you start holding people accountable, they realize they're not going to be getting away with some of the stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that's actually been what's happened a few times, and pretty much puts an end to the toxicity.
You know, you get right, understood.
And people don't like being held accountable if they're doing the wrong thing, and if they want to continue to do the wrong thing, then they won't be staying there.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. Bales again. Will drug education be brought back as another tool to help educate the public as Sheriff author wrong long used during his term?
In the groups out there advocating, if it was justified in front of 37 and it crashes, imagine the national attention that would get, was what
Sure.
he was saying.
That's a good point.
And it's not getting enough education out there to the public.
Yeah.
I mean, the school is doing what they can with there because it's
Mhm.
back in the schools and everything else, but going out to public event mentioned, and that holds true, is that as society and things like that, addiction is to each person to educate and work closely with providers to
National security level. We know where this is coming from.
Yeah.
And I don't. To me, it befuddles my mind. We've seen the movie. Was it Clear and Present Danger?
Mhm.
Just the houses across the border, wherever they're coming, just start plop plop plop.
Yeah.
I know it's just my thought process. We know where the problem is. Let's fix it. Anybody that tries to push drugs into America, done.
Yeah.
Just like if you're holding.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bales. 2017. We didn't go too far back. Kenny Nelson, you work so you know the policy and procedure. Simple question: who is your chief deputy?
So it'd be the lieutenant.
So who will assist you?
Question for getting in there, because there's various deputy, or I don't have any thoughts of currently replacing the lieutenant or anybody right now, because you don't know who's going to be there when everything's said and done. And again,
Sure.
there's more important. I'm going to make you this and qualified to do the job.
Yeah, I respect
So it's
that.
one of those you got to sit back and look at and choose carefully, because they have to know the jail. They have to know the policy, handle the situations.
Right. It's your battle buddy.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't say who it would be, because and to assist me until we can get that all figured out and hashed out. Because of course the first thing you got to look at, and we've been talking about the budget,
Right.
is
Now, or explain why it went away. I'm just
honestly I never asked.
Never asked?
So
That's for Dave Ernst, I guess, to answer, or
Yeah.
the commissioners, county commissioners. So you're going to keep the same people in place. Oh, I'll let you answer. Who's going to run the jail then?
digging for in the spots now, because I can't change that.
Yeah.
I have no say so over that.
Yeah.
So the main priority is to get them trained to where they can do their jobs effectively. Now, do we need
Right.
to find a way to fix?
Sure.
Because again, for sheriff, everybody's got their opinions of the way he's running
Sure.
the department, and
He's the sheriff.
yeah, he's the sheriff.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to throw a question in there and some statistics.
Mhm.
throughout the candidates throwing out these statistics. I did this and I did X number of this. But what I haven't been able to figure out is how can I verify that? So, for instance, you tell me you've done, what was the word of, what's the first thing you do? Primary cause,
The probable cause statement.
Yeah, you're a law enforcement officer and you do a probable cause statement. And you tell me now that you're running for sheriff, and I'm not saying you, but you as a candidate. So
Yeah.
I wrote 1,500 probable cause statements. Where's the juke the stats, so to speak, as they say in the Wire, the TV show? And how's the voter supposed to interpret those statistics? I don't think you actually wrote. You may have some in there, but I didn't dig too deep. But translating that into reasonable intelligence, so that somebody can make a decision. Tell me you did it all day long and you're the best probable cause writer on the planet, but if it sits in your desk or it sits in the public prosecutor's office because it's terrible, I don't get that piece. I just get stage one. 5 voters, out there, it's gonna be listening.
Yeah. And that's and if they're writing them and things like that, you just got to know. I mean, you got to have more knowledge because it's not going to be under our names. It's going to be under the names of the suspects in the cases. Oh,
you're good.
I did it too. But one of the ways you can do that, and it would be very taxing, to say the least.
I know. I tried.
Would be to submit sunshine quests for to their employers or former employers to get some of those records. And granted, if you do get them, they're probably going to be 90% redacted because you're not a part of that case or things like that. But those are really hard to track.
That's what I think, because that's and the candidates. I'm not saying you, but it's one of the I've done the X.
Yeah.
So therefore, I should be sheriff, or I'm better than you. I'm Doug Fowler. I'm running for sheriff. I've done 500 more probable cause statements. But it's just so hard to get to the meat of the issue when he or she decides to cross charges and go X, Y, Z. And the only way you know any different, it just sits up there. He throws it back, not going to do anything with it because it's poorly written.
Yeah. And the reason it's so hard is that I might be telling you the truth by saying, well, I've done 5,000 investigations.
Right.
Okay. That could be true. But one, did I conduct all 5,000 of those investigations, or was I stat to get my numbers up?
Wiring cop shows, and that's how I get my exercise lately these days, is watching cops. And I sit there and think, what does that mean to be on it? What was that?
If I was a part of an investigation.
Yeah. And if all it takes is me to move traffic, it just concerns me. And I think it should concern everybody, And as you're looking at the candidates, including Bryan here, Pappas, or the other two as well, challenge the stats.
Mm-hmm.
As a candidate, I would hope that they have the wherewithal to be able to back them up. So just for everybody out there, that's just keep an eye out. Challenge the stats. Don't take them for granted. Just because we need to know if your plan was to go with.
And this is what we talked about kind of at the beginning of the podcast, is the reason I say you can't make that plan till you sit in the seat is I can go and get this year's budget, and that wouldn't be a problem. But again, I don't take office until next year.
True.
By next year, that budget's already turned in and gets approved by the end of the month. There's no way that whoever wins the election could sit down and write out a functional budget in a week,
right,
and get it approved. And that's why I say you got to sit in there, because there's other issues you're going to have to address with. And if Pappas gets it, he might look at the budget and see, okay, well, they did this, whereas they could have done this.
Right.
And that money could change next year in his budget when he does his budget.
You lost your chief deputy.
And that's why I say you got to sit there in the office for that first year. You're working off the former guy's budget and the problems that he had.
And we talked a little bit about budget.
Yeah.
My understanding of a budget, worked in budget, whatever calendar year, fiscal year, whatever you have it. But you try to do as best you can based off past knowledge. You can't predict what a budget is.
Now,
even worse in your case, you're somebody else's ideas. You're inheriting a budget, but you're also reacting to the current environment. The budget was built in the past based off a lot of knowns and unknowns. And when you get in the office, or whoever gets in the office, is going to have to deal with that and try to use what he's got. This is a budget that I have.
Yeah.
How do I mold that to where I need it?
And the other thing that you kind of want to look at, and I'm probably giving myself away here as one of my strategies, is that
Don't do
the
that.
way budgets work is generally if you come under budget, they're going to look at that and say, okay, they didn't need this much that year, and they request the same amount next year, but they didn't need it all this year.
Oh, sure.
Let's move this money somewhere else. But if you kind of work with your commissioners, because that's what you're going to have to do, and if you have lines that are left over for, let's say,
Sure, sure.
move it into that account and then save it, and then over time it builds up. So should you need the money for more vehicle maintenance down, you can not only use your budget but pull it from that plan
Gotcha.
and use it as that.
Now, past jobs, I worked with the sheriffs. Well, you can't take that money and cross years.
Yeah.
It has to be spent that year or obligated that year.
Yeah, you're pretty much obligated that year, and that's why I said it's something you had to sit down and kind of talk to the commissioners about to see if it's even a possibility.
Gotcha.
Because there's certain dates, and they can fluctuate from year to year,
Sure.
when your budget shuts down,
Gotcha. Yeah.
and you have till that time to use whatever's left for anything you might need, because after that date, you can't touch it.
Yeah.
Because new budget needs to be looked at and approved. So then you're just kind of in a holding pattern.
That's awesome. That's good discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Bales again, with drug driving surpassing drunk driving across America over the last several years, and Pulaski County Sheriff's Office covering more miles of roads than city police departments. Why does the Sheriff's Department have 0 DUI arrests, and Waynesville and St. Robert have high digits arrests for the same category? You may not be able to answer this, but I'll let you choose that.
I will answer it to the best I can. Granted, we do have a lot of roadways,
Right,
and such. We cover 550 square miles,
right,
and right now with the emergency call, then they have to turn around and run to the other side of the county for the emergency call, so they don't have time to make those traffic
Sure.
stops. Whereas cities and municipalities, we discussed this, some of
Yeah.
them are able to pay more. They do have more officers on the road because of that, because of sales tax.
Yeah.
So they have more people on the roadway, and not everybody is needed to run from one side of the city to the other. So they actually have time to do those traffic stops and things like that. Now, I can't speak for everybody out there, but if I hope if it's something egregious that, yes, they would make the stop.
Sure,
But then again, it comes back to staying on top of the training,
sure.
because with drug cases for driving while drugged, you got to be I don't even think Highway Patrol currently has any DREs. I might be wrong on that
Okay.
in our troop.
Wow.
So because DRE it's a monster. And before you can take that other course, you got to have so many stats and so many different categories
Really?
to qualify for that course. So, and that's why DREs are so hard to get.
I'm reading your notes here, Mr. Bales. Thank you so much for contributing to this. Great discussion. Great discussion. If anybody hears that noise in the background, I apologize. It's my furnace. We're in the basement. That's where we're being relegated to. Mr. Bales, the law enforcement sales tax was to enhance the budget by given by the commissioners. I can't speak to that entirely.
I think Sheriff Long was intending for at the time was when that sales tax was approved to kind of save up the money,
Right.
and then make one payment off to do the whole jail type situation. So yeah, I can't speak for him. I don't know if that was his full plan, and even if it was, I don't know what would have fallen apart to where they went ahead and did the new jail without saving up that money,
Right.
or if that was even the case. That's just something I've heard.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that sales tax, I honestly can't speak much on that because I wasn't a part of it or
Sure.
have the knowledge on it.
There was something Daryl Todd's posting about, and the latest one with the commissioners is like $280,000. But I can't speak smart enough. If I had time, I'd pull it up and show everybody what it was. But take a look at that. There was something about money may be available to the sheriff's department. So, any other questions going out there? I do have another question. What the sheriff is the lead LEO for the county? Is that correct?
Yes.
So generally don't know. Sure.
So of course we got to work with them on MOU agreements and everything to figure out what they would need from us, what we can provide for them, and everything else.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's a federal installation, so it's its own little monster out there waiting.
Have you been able to take it? I mean, since you've been down at the sheriff's office, taking advantage of. Let me back up a little bit. Sometimes you see a lot of out-of-state law enforcement vehicles coming in and off post, obviously taking advantage of training that's being afforded. Mm-hmm. Is Pulaski County able to take advantage of that too, or have they?
Yes. Let's say if CID has a course and they have some extra seats or some open training that's open to the public, because again, it's also going to depend if it's open to the public, military-only type situation or whatever. But they're real good at working with us to giving us that opportunity as well to go in and attend that training. But yes, we have been able to go to some of the training on Fort Leonard Wood that they provide as well.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, because like I said, I wasn't there for that, and I don't have all the knowledge on that one, but that is just what I had heard. So I wasn't sure on that one.
I just know it was over budget. That's what I think it was, wasn't it? 13.7?
I believe it was over budget, and Again, I can't speak to why, but of course, COVID hit at that time, and then as soon as COVID was over, the price on everything skyrocketed. So
it's a rule number one of government contracting. You know, it's gonna have cost overrides.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bales. I appreciate it very much. Anybody else out there? Let me check my text. I'll see if I got any text. Anybody else want to call in? The number's going across the screen. We'll call. All right, we're gonna leave it be. Mr. Gibbs, I do appreciate it. This is an hour and 25 minutes. You've been very receptive and honest with your questions. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Again, thanks for having me. It's something I want to do to reach out to the community and the voters and answer any questions they might have to the best that I can.
Absolutely. And I told Mr. Pappas the door's always open. It doesn't cost you anything if you want to talk some more as you campaign, and I hope you're the best for the best.
Thank you.
Just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I want to stress to the listeners and everybody out there watching to get out there and give us those questions. Yeah. Don't hold back on us, because at the end, you're electing us to do the job for you. We're serving you. So you need to make sure that you have all the knowledge to make the decision of who you feel is going to be the best candidate for this office.
I'm going to caveat by saying challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
The status quo has been, as far as I'm concerned, and a little disclaimer, I'm just a podcast guy, but I throw some pretty slides on Facebook and everybody thinks I'm dig into the statistics.
And again, the statistics thing, it's going to be a difficult thing to do. But if I were to come out and say I was an expert in something, I mean, listeners can go out and get on the websites and see that, okay, he said he's an expert in this. What all does it take for him by law to be considered an expert, and have us produce that material to you to prove that, we've done everything to meet that says that we're an expert.
Absolutely. There should be some qualitative documentation or evidence to back up everything that any of the candidates, any of the officers have. Because otherwise, we just get into that bluffery that for advertising, you don't know what's truth or fiction.
Yeah.
And we'll go back to where we were last campaign, where the candidates got 5 minutes on the stage, and that's how we make our decision. So, anyway, thank you so much. Oh, LB Page, you're fantastic, my dear. Well, thank you. I don't know who you are, but I appreciate it. I just put this. Oh, you're not talking about me.
That's the fiance.
Oh, here we go. Mr. Bales, $9 million to start, $16 million to
Yeah, that's a little bit of
16.
Yeah, almost double what it was supposed to go for.
Yeah, that's an ouch. Anybody else got some questions? If not, we're going to log off. It'll be available on YouTube as well. If you're interested in placing an ad in our site, we got plenty of room for it, and I'll take your money if you want to have. Number is correct. Thank you, Mr. Bales. I wish it. Let me say this, Mr. Bales. I wish it was a decimal point in the wrong area, like maybe 10.6 million instead of 9 million. But if it's 16 million, I'd imagine how the stuff would fly if that would explode. But thank you, everybody, for watching. We're going to transition out of this. The close come be on my show too, so we look forward to catching up with you. Out of here, everybody.